The calm before the fight, stadium lights flickered to life, one by one, as if the heavens themselves were watching. It was a warm Friday night in Las Vegas, and the arena was packed with fans roaring in anticipation. Banners waved, phones flashed, and chants echoed off the high concrete walls. Tonight was supposed to be a special evening, a celebrity charity event meant to raise money for underprivileged kids. But no one could predict what would happen, or how one man's silence would roar louder than the entire crowd combined. In the middle of the backstage hallway, Keanu Reeves stood quietly, adjusting the strap of his simple black training gloves. He wasn't there to fight. He wasn't even scheduled to speak. He had only come to show support, take a few photos, and donate anonymously. He wore no fancy clothes, no entourage followed him, and most people didn't even recognize him in his plain hoodie and worn-out sneakers. He liked it that way. He preferred the quiet. He always had, but trouble doesn't knock. Sometimes it kicks down the door. On the other end of the hallway, Dominic the Viper Vance was pacing like a tiger in a cage. Muscles bulging, tattoos covering his neck and arms, and ego radiating from his smirk. He was the star of tonight's exhibition. Match, undefeated, young, brash, a social media sensation with millions of followers. And most importantly, he knew Keanu was in the building. "Yo, old man," Dominic barked suddenly, loud enough for everyone nearby to hear. Didn't know Hollywood actors were allowed backstage. "What are you here for, a selfie?" Keanu looked up slowly, surprised by the directness, but not rattled. He gave a soft smile and replied gently, "Just watching. Supporting. That's all." Dominic's laughter was sharp. "Supporting? You mean hiding, or maybe warming up for a slow-motion action scene? Come on, man, this is a real sport. Not some John Wick movie." The laughter from his crew echoed behind him. Cameras clicked. Someone nearby started recording. Keanu didn't blink. He stepped closer, not in anger, but with that strange piece he carried like a shield. "It's impressive what you do," he said. "Discipline, courage, it takes a lot. I respect it." "Respect?" Dominic scoffed. "You don't even belong here. You're a joke in this world." The hallway fell quiet. Someone from the event team stepped in. "Please guys, this is a peaceful charity event. Mr. Reeves is our guest." But Dominic wasn't done. His pride was like a fire that couldn't stop burning. "Nah, let's make it interesting. You say you respect fighting? How about we settle it in the cage? 1 round. No hard hits, just fun. Unless you're too scared." Keanu took a breath, deep, calm. He had no reason to accept. He wasn't a fighter, at least not in the way Dominic was. He trained, yes. He learned jiu-jitsu for his films. He had practiced for years in silence, always pushing himself. Not for ego, not for fame, for focus, for discipline, for peace. He looked at Dominic's eyes, full of heat and hunger for attention, and said quietly, "I don't fight to win. I practice to learn." Dominic leaned in close, smirking. "So that's a no?" Keanu looked around. The cameras were out. People were whispering. And then, a small boy tugged at his sleeve. The boy couldn't have been more than 9. He wore a hospital bracelet, thin arms, bald head, eyes wide with hope. Double quotes, "Mr. Reeves," the boy said softly. "Can you fight? Just once? I want to see you do it, please." Keanu knelt beside him, smiled and nodded. "Okay," he said. What happened next shocked everyone. Within an hour, the exhibition match had been changed. The crowd didn't even know until the announcement rang out over the speaker. "Special surprise, Dominic the Viper Vance will face off against Keanu Reeves." The arena gasped. Phones went wild. Hashtags exploded across the internet. Inside the locker room, Keanu sat alone. No coach, no spotlight, just silence. He closed his eyes, remembering the boy's voice. remembering his own father long ago who told him, "Violence shows power, restraint shows strength." But tonight, it wasn't about violence or power. It was about proving that sometimes the strongest man in the room is the one who never wanted to fight. Meanwhile, Dominic was busy hyping himself up on live streams. "This'll be over in 20 seconds, he boasted. "Watch me send Neo back to the Matrix." When Keanu walked into the cage, the crowd erupted, not with cheers, but with questions. What was he thinking? Was this real? Was it a joke? He stood calm, barefoot, focused, hands loose by his sides. Dominic grinned like a lion spotting prey. The bell rang. What followed wasn't a fight, it was a lesson. Dominic charged fast, fists raised, confidence bursting from every step. He threw a punch toward Keanu's side. Keanu slipped it. No panic, just grace. He stepped back, letting the young fighter swing again. Again, he dodged. The crowd began to notice. This wasn't luck. It was control. Dominic frowned, annoyed now, and went for a low kick. Keanu blocked it smoothly. Not a single punch had landed on him. The cocky smirk on Dominic's face started to crack. He rushed again. Keanu didn't move much, just shifted his weight, used Dominic's energy, and gently redirected him to the mat with a smooth jiu-jitsu sweep. The crowd gasped. Dominic looked stunned. Not hurt, just surprised, embarrassed. Keanu didn't press forward. He stepped back and offered his hand. The audience fell silent. This wasn't a fight. It was something else. Up, breathing hard, sweat dripping down his forehead. He stared at Keanu's hand. And for the first time in his career, he took it. When they stood together, the crowd rose to their feet in one thunderous applause. Not for a knockout, not for a victory, but for respect. Keanu didn't smile. He just nodded, bowed lightly to Dominic, and turned to leave the cage. But before he did, he walked to the edge, bent down to that same boy sitting near the front row, and handed him his gloves. "For you," he said. "Always believe in quiet strength." The crowd didn't know whether to cheer or cry. Even Dominic, now silent behind him, lowered his head and clapped. But this wasn't the end. This was just the beginning. Asterisk behind the applausive roar of the crowd still echoed through the night air as Keanu quietly walked through the backstage corridor, towels slung over his shoulders, face calm as ever. People passed him with wide eyes, stunned, moved, unsure what to say. Some clapped softly, others just stared. No one expected what had happened in that ring. It wasn't just a moment. It was a message, but Keanu didn't stop to bask in it. He didn't stop to explain. He went straight to the locker room, sat on the bench, and took a deep breath. The cameras were off now, the noise faded. He was alone again. Then, a soft knock. "Come in," he said gently. The door opened slowly. It was Dominic. His ego, for the first time, wasn't in the room with him. He stepped in, eyes down, holding a water bottle. "Hey," he mumbled, voice lower than before. Keanu looked up. "Hey." Dominic scratched the back of his neck. "Look, I just wanted to say, I was out of line earlier. I was trying to show off. I thought I thought I had to prove something." Keanu stayed silent, listening. Dominic sat down across from him, the fight replaying in his mind. "I've fought world champions, trained for years, but tonight, I've never felt more humbled. Not because you beat me, but because you didn't try to." Keanu finally spoke. "There's a difference between fighting and dominating. You've got talent, Dominic, real skill. But sometimes, the loudest voice in the room needs to learn how to listen." Dominic nodded, ashamed, but also grateful. "You didn't have to accept. You didn't have to do any of that." Keanu smiled softly. "I didn't do it for me." Dominic raised an eyebrow. "Then why?" "For the boy," Keanu replied. "For anyone who ever got mocked. For anyone who ever stayed silent and still stood tall." Outside, reporters swarmed. Social media had already exploded. The moment was everywhere: clips of the match, slow-motion videos of Dominic missing his strikes, and a viral image of Keanu helping him up. But what no one saw was what happened next. Later that night, Keanu drove to a small diner off the highway. It was nearly midnight. He sat in a booth in the corner, hoodie on, head down. He ordered coffee and a grilled cheese. A waitress named Mia, no older than 23, brought it to him with a tired smile. "Long night?" she asked. Double quotes. "Yeah," he replied. As she walked away, she paused and looked back. You're Keanu, right?" He nodded with a warm smile. "Don't tell anyone." She laughed softly. "Your secret's safe with me." Minutes later, she returned with a folded napkin. On it, she had written, "My brother has cancer. We watched the event tonight. You gave him the best day of his life. Thank you." Keanu read it slowly, then looked up. Mia was wiping down the counter with tears in her eyes. He reached into his pocket, pulled out his wallet, and quietly placed something on the table. Then he walked out into the night. When Mia came to clear the booth, she found a check under the plate. It was for $50,000, no note, just his name at the bottom. The next morning, headlines around the world lit up with praise. Keanu shows what real strength looks like. Hollywood star teaches MMA fighter a lesson in humility. The silent warrior, how Keanu Reeves shocked the fight world. But back in Dominic's gym, the mood was different. The atmosphere was heavy. His manager stormed in, slamming the door behind him. "What the hell was that, Dominic?" he shouted. "You embarrassed the brand. Sponsors are pulling out." Dominic stood tall, but not with arrogance anymore. Something inside him had shifted. "I learned something," he said quietly. "You what?" The manager snapped. "I learned that all this noise, the show, the trash talk, it means nothing if you lose your soul in the process." The manager scoffed. "Soul doesn't sell." "No," Dominic said, staring out the window, "but truth does." And with that, he walked away. Not just from the conversation, but from that version of himself. 2 weeks passed. Keanu stayed out of the spotlight, as always. But people kept talking. Not about a knockout. Not about a championship. But about respect. Then came a letter. It arrived at Keanu's front door in a plain envelope. Inside was a photo of that same little boy from the arena. This time he was in a hospital bed, smiling, holding the gloves Keanu gave him. Beside him stood Mia, the waitress from the diner, and Dominic. The letter read, "You didn't just change a moment. You changed people. Thank you." Keanu held the letter in his hands. For a long time, no cameras, no headlines, just silence. And in that silence, he smiled, but fate wasn't done with him yet, because something was happening behind the scenes. Something that would pull Keanu back into the spotlight in a way he never expected. Someone from Dominic's past was watching. Someone who didn't take the humiliation lightly. Someone who wanted revenge, not just on Dominic, but on the man who had made him bow. And they were coming. Asterisk shadows from the past. Sun had barely touched the horizon when Dominic's old mentor arrived at the gym's doorstep. His name was Rick Barton, ex-fighter, ex-trainer, full of pride and bitterness. Once a rising star in the mama world, Rick's career had ended abruptly after a brutal defeat years ago, one that spiraled into addiction, lawsuits, and eventual obscurity. Now he was trying to climb back, using Dominic's fame as his ticket. When Rick walked into the gym that morning, he didn't greet anyone. His presence was like a cold wind, uninvited, unsettling. He stared at Dominic, who was in the middle of training younger kids in the gym, and didn't say a word at first. "You embarrassed yourself," Rick finally said, arms crossed. "And me." Dominic didn't flinch. "I learned something important that night." Rick's jaw tightened. "You learned how to become a coward in front of millions." Dominic shook his head. "No, I learned humility. I learned how to respect someone who didn't need to fight back to prove a point. Rick stepped closer, voice low and sharp. You think that guy taught you something? He's an actor, Dominic. He fakes fights. You think that makes him better than real fighters, than me? He didn't pretend that night, Dominic said quietly. He let me wear myself out without touching me. He could have humiliated me, but he chose to lift me up instead. Rick scoffed. Sounds like weakness to me. Then maybe you've never really understood strength, Dominic replied. Rick's eyes narrowed. He made you soft. And now, everyone's laughing. Dominic paused, then looked at Rick with something different in his eyes. Not anger. Not fear. Peace. Maybe it's time people stop fearing strength and start understanding it. Rick didn't respond. He just turned around and walked out, slamming the door behind him, but something dangerous had awakened inside him. He wasn't done. Days later, Keanu was volunteering at a small martial arts center for children. It wasn't for the cameras. No press was around. Just him, barefoot on the mat, teaching balance and breathing to a group of excited kids. One little girl, Sarah, raised her hand. Do you ever get scared when people try to fight you? Keanu knelt beside her. Yes, he said. Fear is normal, but when you stay calm, fear becomes something you can carry instead of something that controls you. The room went silent. Even the parents watching from the back felt something shift. At that moment, one of the instructors walked in, holding a phone. Mr. Reeves, sorry to interrupt. Someone's outside. Says he knows you. Keanu stepped out to the small parking lot, expecting maybe a fan or a friend, but there, leaning against a beat-up old motorcycle, stood Rick Barden. Keanu single quotes, S face softened, not with fear, but with caution. Rick, he said. Rick lit a cigarette, squinting under the sun. Long time. Yeah, Keanu nodded. Didn't expect to see you here, Rick chuckled, blowing smoke into the sky. You made quite the impression on my former protégé. He's learning, Keanu replied. We all are. Rick looked him in the eye. I'm setting up a match, me and you. For real, not charity, not cameras, just us. Let's see what you really got. Keanu paused. I don't fight to prove anything. Rick leaned in. Then why did you step in that cage, huh? Because some sick kid asked you to. Because it made you feel noble? Keanu didn't answer right away. He stared at Rick, long and steady. I stepped in because someone needed to see it. Someone needed to believe, Rick sneered. That's weakness. No, Keanu said calmly. That's purpose. Rick grinned cruelly. I'll be waiting. Let's see how long your purpose lasts in the ring. He got on his bike and rode off engine, growling like a threat left in the wind. A week passed. Keanu ignored the challenge. He didn't respond publicly. He continued his quiet work, reading books to kids in shelters, helping out at community centers, supporting struggling artists behind the scenes. But then came the video. Rick had recorded himself in an empty gym, punching bags violently, calling Keanu out by name. You're scared, he said to the camera. You're all talk. I don't care how many movies you make. Come face me. The video went viral. Not because of the call-out, but because of what happened next. Dominic posted a response. In a quiet, dimly lit room, Dominic stared into his phone and said, I once thought power was about dominance. Now I know it's about discipline. Keanu didn't embarrass me. He taught me. And Rick, if you think calling out a man who stands for peace makes you strong, you're more lost than I thought. Then he ended with, leave him alone, or you'll have to answer to MMA. The internet exploded with reactions. Fans split between hype and hate. Some wanted the fight. Others begged for peace. And still Keanu remained silent. Until one night, after visiting the boy from the arena at the hospital, Keanu sat alone in the garden outside. The boy was sleeping peacefully now. He had told Keanu, you don't have to fight anyone. You already fought for me. Those words echoed through the silence. Keanu looked up at the stars. Then he made a decision. Not for pride, not for revenge, but for closure. He called Dominic first. I need your help, Keanu said. Dominic was shocked. With what? Training, Keanu said. I'm going to face Rick. Dominic froze. Are you sure? No, Keanu replied. But it's time. 3 weeks later, inside a quiet private gym, no crowd, no media, just silence. Keanu stood in front of a punching bag, sweat dripping, breath slow and controlled. Dominic stood nearby, coaching him gently. Don't fight to win, Dominic said. Fight to show him what he forgot. Keanu nodded. Each movement was smooth, precise, graceful. He wasn't just learning to fight. He was remembering who he was, his balance, his strength, his purpose. Rick had no idea what was coming, and this time, the cage wouldn't be for entertainment. It would be a lesson, not just for Rick, but for everyone watching from the shadows. The fire within the gym was silent, except for the rhythmic sound of Keanu's breath. He stood alone on the mat before sunrise, barefoot, eyes closed, hands by his side. The world outside was loud with opinions and speculation, but in here there was only stillness. He wasn't training to destroy Rick Barton. He was training to center himself. Across the weeks, Dominic had become his coach, his partner in discipline. They trained without cameras. No lights, no noise. Just repetition, sweat, patience, and quiet purpose. You don't need to hurt him, Dominic said during one sparring session. Just show him what control looks like. Keanu nodded. I'm not entering to break his body. I'm entering to remind him what he's forgotten. Dominic paused. And what's that? Keanu replied softly. That power without peace is poison. Meanwhile, Rick was fueling his side of the fire. Every day, he posted new clips slamming punching bags, mocking Keanu's calm nature, and warning that this would be the end of the Hollywood myth. I've been through the real cage, he shouted in one post. Reeves walks around like a monk. He's soft. I'm going to snap that calm mask off his face. His followers angry, loud, hungry for violence, grew by the thousands. What none of them saw was the truth. Rick wasn't trying to prove something to the world. He was trying to heal something broken inside him by destroying someone else. Too. Nights before the match, Keanu sat by the hospital bed of the young boy from the arena. The boy's mother was asleep in a nearby chair. Machines beeped softly. The boy, thin and pale but still smiling, looked up at Keanu. You're really gonna fight him? He whispered. Keanu nodded. Yes. But I thought you said peace is stronger than fists. Keanu smiled gently. It is. That's why I'm walking in calm. And that's how I'll walk out, the boy giggled. Can I come? Keanu placed a hand over his. You'll be the first I see after. He meant it. The match was set. No stadium. No commentators. It would be streamed online for charity. The organizers kept it simple: one private gym, a clean cage, a small audience of invited guests, and a cause worth standing for. Rick arrived early, storming through the gym like a soldier going to war. He glared at Dominic, who stood at the edge of the mat. Can't believe you're helping him, Rick snapped. Thought you had spine. Dominic stood tall. I used to think you were a mentor. Now I see you were just loud. Rick spat on the floor. You'll regret siding with him. Maybe, Dominic replied calmly. But I'm at peace. Rick walked off, fists clenched. Keanu entered quietly, wearing simple black pants and a gray shirt. No entrance music. No drama. Just stillness. The cage door closed. The bell rang. Rick came out like a bull, charging, snarling, throwing wild fists. Keanu didn't flinch. He moved like wind. Not retreating, just redirecting. Every punch missed. The crowd of invited guests leaned forward, jaws dropping. Rick growled in frustration, throwing a sharp kick. Keanu blocked it smoothly, his hands never rushing, his body never stiff. Fight me. Rick screamed. Keanu finally spoke. I am. Rick lunged again, this time. Keanu stepped aside and gently swept his leg. Rick hit the mat with a thud. Gasps filled the room. Keanu didn't strike. He simply stepped back, giving Rick space. Rick got up, enraged. You think you're better than me? Keanu shook his head. No. I think you forgot who you were before the anger. Rick froze. You were a fighter, Keanu continued. But you were also a teacher. A guide. A man who used to inspire people. Then the loss broke you. And you decided pain was strength. It's not. Rick's lip quivered. You don't know anything about me. Keanu's voice softened. I know what it's like to lose. But pain doesn't give you permission to hurt others. Rick charged again, rage blinding him. Keanu disarmed the strike midair, turned, and gently brought Rick to the ground using a basic arm technique. Not a violent slam. Not a show. Just calm, controlled precision. Rick lay on the mat, chest heaving. Eyes wide. The bell rang. The match was over. Keanu never struck once. He extended a hand. Rick stared at it. Breath heavy, eyes glossy. And for the first time in years, Rick took someone's hand not in defiance, but in surrender. Keanu helped him up. They stood together, not as enemies, but as men who had finally faced themselves. After the match, the video went viral again. But not because of violence, because of what Keanu said into the microphone after. He stood in front of the quiet room and looked into the lens. Some people think being calm means being weak. They think kindness means surrender. But what they don't understand is that true power is restraint. True strength is when you know you can destroy someone, but you choose to lift them instead. He paused. Don't let the world trick you into thinking anger is courage. It's not. Peace is. Then he walked off. Leaving behind a silence more powerful than any punch. Rick didn't speak to anyone for 2 days after the fight. On the third day, he posted a photo of himself sitting alone on a bench in the gym, head down. The caption read, I didn't lose the fight. I lost the part of myself that needed to hurt people to feel strong. Thank you, Keanu. Millions shared the post, not because it was flashy, but because it was honest. Later that week, Keanu returned to the hospital to see the little boy. This time, he brought Dominic and Rick with him. The boy lit up with joy. You all came. Keanu smiled. A promise is a promise. Rick knelt beside the bed, placing a small medal in the boy's hand. You gave me more courage than any ring ever has. The boy beamed. That night as they walked out into the fresh air, Dominic looked at Keanu. What made you really say yes to that fight? Keanu looked at the stars, because sometimes, he said, you fight not to win but to heal. When healing begins, the days after the fight brought something no one expected: silence. Not the kind of silence that comes from shame, but the kind that grows after a storm passes. People online didn't argue. They didn't pick sides. They listened. Keanu had shifted the conversation without yelling, without force. He had walked into a fight and come out with his hands open, not clenched. And that changed something in people. Rick Barden hadn't been seen on camera again, but he was working, quietly. Every morning at 6, he returned to his old gym and began cleaning it. Mopping the floors himself, wiping the dusty mirrors, repainting the chipped walls. When asked why he didn't hire someone, he simply said, because I broke this place with my ego. I should be the one to fix it. Dominic visited one afternoon and found Rick standing on a ladder, replacing a light bulb. Never thought I'd see you doing maintenance. Dominic joked. Rick climbed down and smiled, a little softer now. Never thought I'd want to, so Dominic said, what's next? Rick leaned on the ladder. I'm reopening this place. But not for fighters, for kids. Kids who are angry, scared, lost, like I was. Dominic paused. You sure you're ready to teach again? Rick nodded. No. But I'm ready to learn while I try. Meanwhile, Keanu had returned to what he loved, helping others behind the scenes. No interviews, no red carpets. Just kindness. One evening, he received a message from a woman named Claire. She was the mother of a boy who had once trained under Rick before he fell from grace. Her son, Devin, had gotten into trouble, fights at school, skipping classes, anger issues. After watching the charity fight between Keanu and Rick, Devin told his mom, "I want to train again. But only if it's with people like that." Claire's message was simple. "He saw peace in your hands. He wants to learn that." "Thank you," Keanu replied with only a few words. "Send him to the gym. Rick will be waiting." On a quiet Saturday morning, Devin stood outside Rick's gym, nervously holding his bag. Rick opened the door, no longer in flashy gear, just a plain shirt and sweatpants. He looked down at the boy and smiled. "First time?" Devin nodded. Rick stepped aside. "Then, let's not waste it." Inside, the gym was different now. No posters of aggressive knockouts. Instead, quotes covered the walls. "Control begins with calm. Strength is quiet. Train your heart, not just your hands." Devin looked around wide-eyed. "Did you write those?" Rick smiled. "No. Someone I used to ignore did." Back at the hospital, the little boy Keanu had promised to visit was getting better. The doctors were hopeful, and the energy around his room had shifted. He still wore Keanu's gloves proudly. But now, next to his bed, stood something new, a large photo of him with Keanu, Dominic, and Rick, all holding up their fists with smiles on their faces. He called them the Peace Team. The story of that fight wasn't just about physical strength anymore. Schools began using clips from it to teach students about discipline and conflict resolution. One teacher showed the clip of Keanu helping Rick up from the mat, saying, "This is what winning really looks like." A movement was forming, one without shouting, without fists, but with heart. One night, Keanu sat at a small cafe reading a book. He liked the quiet corners, the forgotten places. He was just finishing his tea when a young man approached him. He wore a hoodie and looked nervous. "Hey," the man said. "Sorry to bother you, but I watched that fight with Rick, and I haven't been the same since." Keanu looked up, curious but kind. "What changed?" The man sat down across from him. "I used to think the world only respected aggression. I thought if I wasn't loud, I wouldn't matter. But watching you, you didn't raise your voice. You didn't attack. You didn't even try to win. And somehow, you won everything." Keanu gave a small smile. "Sometimes silence speaks louder." The young man nodded, eyes watery. "I left a gang last week. I told them I was done hurting people. They laughed. But I didn't feel afraid. For the first time." Keanu placed a hand on the table. "That takes more courage than most people ever show." The young man swallowed hard. "Thanks to you." They sat in silence for a moment. Then Keanu asked, "What's your name?" "James." Keanu reached out and shook his hand. "Keep going, James." But just as peace began to spread, another twist was waiting. Keanu received a private message through a secure email from an unknown sender. The subject line read, "You may have calmed the storm, but you forgot the ones who profit from chaos." Attached was a photo. It showed a different gym. One Keanu didn't recognize. In it stood a group of men in suits, standing beside an angry-looking young fighter who resembled Rick in his early years. Beneath the image were 6 words, "We're building something louder than peace." Keanu sat back in his chair, eyes narrowing. This wasn't over. There were people watching. People who didn't want healing. They wanted rage. They wanted noise. And they had just declared war on silence. Asterisk. Louder than silence. Keanu stared at the screen. The message echoed in his mind like thunder before a storm. We're building something louder than peace. He leaned back in his chair, slowly exhaling. The cafe around him was quiet. The world outside didn't know yet. But something darker was forming, a machine designed not to inspire but to exploit. This wasn't just about fighting anymore. This was about the soul of a generation. Meanwhile, across town, inside a sleek, high-end facility, the new gym operated like a factory. Cameras on every wall, neon lights, loud music. Every fighter had followers. Every punch was for a reel. Their champion in training was a 22-year-old sensation, named KeanuReeves, tall, explosive, trained by the very people who once pushed Rick Barden into the spotlight and watched him burn. But they didn't want Keanu to learn humility. They wanted him to destroy. Their motto was painted across the wall in bold red letters: silence is weakness. Domination is everything. They built him to be the anti-gash Keanu. And they were ready to unleash him. Dominic was the first to call Keanu. Have you seen it? He asked. Yes, Keanu replied. They're trying to turn violence into a product. Dominic hesitated. They want you to come out of retirement again. They're setting Keanu up to challenge you. It's already all over social media. I know, Keanu said softly. They think if they beat the symbol, they break the message. Dominic's voice cracked. You sure you want to step in again? Keanu didn't answer right away. He looked out the window at a group of kids playing soccer in the street. They were laughing, falling, getting back up. No anger, just life. This time, Keanu said, I won't fight him. I'll teach him. Days passed. Billboards popped up in Vegas. Keanu versus Reeves. Peace ends now. The internet went wild. Some people begged Keanu not to go. Others mocked him. Keanu appeared on talk shows, throwing insults, saying, he's just a movie monk. I'll flatten him. Everybody had an opinion, but Keanu remained silent until he released one short video. Standing in a simple dojo with no music, no lights. He looked straight into the lens and said, if you think the only way to be strong is to shout louder and hit harder, then let's talk in the cage. I'm not stepping in to win. I'm stepping in to wake you up. He bowed once, then walked off screen. The video broke the internet. Fight night came. This time, the arena was packed. Sponsors, cameras, celebrities, all hoping for a show. Keanu strutted into the cage wearing custom gold shorts. Loud music, fireworks, flashing lights. The crowd roared. Then Keanu entered. No music. No spotlight. Just footsteps. And silence. The contrast was striking. As they faced each other, Keanu smirked. Ready to get humbled, old man? Keanu looked at him, not with anger, but with compassion. I hope you're ready to grow. The bell rang. Keanu charged like a storm. Punches flew. Kicks whipped through the air. Speed, power, precision, all fueled by ego. Keanu didn't strike back. He flowed. Redirected. Deflected. His body moved like water. Keanu grew angrier. He shouted insults mid-fight. Fight me, stop dancing. The crowd screamed, unsure what they were watching. Then it happened. Keanu launched a flying knee. Keanu turned just enough. Keanu crashed to the mat safe. But stunned. Keanu didn't take advantage. He extended a hand. Arena froze. Just like that night with Rick. But this time, Keanu slapped Keanu's hand away and jumped up. Stop playing with me, he shouted. Keanu didn't move. I'm not playing, he said. I'm showing you how to control chaos. Keanu hesitated. His chest was heaving. Sweat dripping. For a moment, he looked like a child trying to understand something far too big. Keanu stepped forward, gently placed a hand on Keanu's shoulder, and said, You're fighting the wrong person. Keanu blinked. What? You're not in here to beat me. You're in here to outrun your own fear, your own pain. But you can't punch your way through that. You have to listen to it. The crowd was silent. Keanu looked around. His coaches were shouting at him to finish the match, but something inside him cracked. He dropped his fists. He backed away, and he knelt. Not because he was broken, but because he was finally awake. The bell rang. The fight ended. Keanu walked over, knelt beside him, and whispered, "You just won the biggest fight of your life." The crowd rose to their feet, not for a knockout. Not for blood, but for surrender. Real surrender, the kind that leads to freedom. After the match, the sponsors pulled back. They didn't want a story about peace. But something else had already begun. Videos of the moment Keanu dropped to his knees were shared across every platform. Thousands of comments poured in. "I've never cried watching a fight before. This changed the way I see strength." My son asked if he could start jiu-jitsu, not to fight, but to learn control. Even Rick Barden released a statement. "I once believed in violence. Now, I believe in men like Keanu." Months later, Keanu's image appeared on a mural painted on the side of an old gym. Beside him stood Dominic, Rick, and Keanu, all in fighting stances. But above them, written in bold letters, "Real fighters bring peace." Beneath the mural, kids trained barefoot on the mat, laughing between drills. And on a quiet bench nearby, Keanu sat with the little boy who had inspired it all. The boy's hair had begun growing back. He wore a white belt and held a juice box in one hand. "You didn't hit him," the boy said, smiling. Keanu smiled too. "I didn't need to." The boy leaned on his shoulder. "You're the strongest man I know." Keanu looked at the horizon and whispered, "Only because I stopped trying to be."